So let me restart. I'm here because our futures are on fire, right? And we didn't start it. You know, around this time last year, I live in the Harbor Gateway area, but I work at Venice High School. And if you know me, I'm constantly complaining about the commute because it is terrible. And so you can imagine last year when the fires, so Palisades and Altadena were on fire, and having to be told that we still had to show up to school. Driving up 405 North, seeing the ashes in the air, it was like driving into the jaws of the beast of the climate crisis, of climate catastrophe. Obviously, or rather, thankfully, a lot of parents already withheld their students from coming to school, and after a few hours of realizing that actually, you know, teacher union is right, that we should shut down schools because it's not safe to be, you know, working, playing, you know, as the air is being, you know, littered with ashes and all types of other chemicals, that they finally told us to go home. Driving home, I'm seeing in the rearview mirror, right, the fires, the smoke, and I just couldn't help but feel deeply enraged by the fact that we didn't start this fire. Right? This is a fire, a crisis, right, created by the fossil fuel industry. I was heartbroken also to learn about the fires in Altadena. And, you know, as an AP African American Studies teacher, as an ethnic studies teacher, it's important for me to also name, right, how Altadena is a historically black neighborhood. And how did we get there? Right, red light, right, legacy of state-sanctioned racist, capitalist practices forcing black communities and other communities of color into racial covenants, right, to fend for themselves, right, in the midst of neglect from the city. And several generations later, that same community now also has to rebuild. And it's gonna be harder for them to rebuild as a result of the legacies of capitalism, of white supremacist politics. As a child of Nigerian immigrants, it's also important for me to ground this crisis within a globalized imperial context. It's not a coincidence that Nigeria, which was bombed on Christmas Day under the guise of protecting Christians, it's not a coincidence that Venezuela, right, of whose leader was abducted, that these are the same countries that are also major producers of oil. It's not a coincidence because our president, right, has named it explicitly why these communities are being targeted. And so, you know, Bell Hooks, who was one of my biggest inspirations, she's coined the term imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy, because all these systems are interconnected. This crisis isn't just about what we see in terms of the ashes, in terms of the fire, the bombings. It's also what we breathe day in and day out. It's about communities that are at the brunt of this crisis. As a Harbor Gateway resident who ran for city council and does organizing work with Sunrise and other groups, coming to bear witness to Wilmington, places like Wilmington, the third largest urban oil field in the country, where you have communities that have some of the highest rates of asthma, of cancer, of miscarriages, kids going to school with nosebleeds, right, because the air is literally damaging their bodies, right, the toxins damaging their bodies, and it's also risking the sanctity of the water that we drink, and also the future of the communities that we call home. This crisis is also political. Right? And overall, I see this as between people versus money. When we talk about big oil, we're talking about major corporations that rake in billions of dollars, right? But also, when we talk about big money, we're talking about big oil, we're talking about big money, right? So outsized influence within our political system. Fascism, right? A type of political system where whoever runs it, whoever controls it, forces, right, their ideologies, their regime onto the masses without their input, right, is also runs on big oil. Donald Trump, right, he part of the reason why he's elected is because of the donations that Big Oil has made towards his administration. But not just Donald Trump or Republicans. We know that Democrats also have been taking Big Oil, wiping their hands clean with fossil fuel, oil, dirty money, right? And then selling us out in closed doors. This is why we need the Make Polluters Pay campaign. As a member of the Working Families Party, we are a coalition-based mass movement building organization dedicated to empowering multiracial working class majority to ensure that our government works for us, right, and not Big Oil or any other big corporation. We can create different choices away from the ones that these politicians and oil execs have created for us. We can shift our policies, our politics, our society away from one that is extractive, as exploitative, to one that is sustainable and centers working people, us. We can do this work by continuing to elect climate justice champions like Senator Menjivar and Gonzalez and Fatima. But that isn't enough. The truth of the matter is politicians aren't going to save us, right? We save us. We keep us safe. We need to continue to do the work of building within our labor unions, continue to do the work in building in our neighborhoods, our neighborhood councils, etc., and work in collaboration, co-governance, mass governance, right, where the masses of people are deciding the policy agenda for our politicians. If fossil fuels went the way of democracy, it would go the way of, to quote Sunrise, the dinosaurs, pun intended. And so, let's do this work. I'm excited to be in community with all of you, to be in solidarity, and passing working family center policy like Make Polluters Pay. Thank you.